Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Ruggiano, and in 1988, I was struggling with addiction, and I went into a treatment center. I set up a helpline number, which is 855-963-2113. That's 855-963-2113. That number, phones will be manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you're struggling with addiction, or you know someone that is struggling with addiction, please call that number and let me help. I will be hands-on. I will be personally involved in the person's recovery. They will meet me. They will spend time with me, and I will help them live a life beyond their wildest dreams. Just want to let everybody know the shirts are in, Reformed Gangsters. If you want to purchase one, please go to my website, anthonyruggiano.com, and order your shirt. Come get them. They're hot. Hello, everybody. My name is Anthony Ruggiano Jr., and I want to welcome everybody to Reformed Gangsters. If you enjoy my content, please click the button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. Thank you to all my Patreon members, because become a member at Reformed Gangsters and get early access to content and be part of the show. We have a lot of fun on here. You, the members, pick what I talk about, which is really good because, you know, it gives me topics to talk about. Ask and get your Mafia history questions answered. You know, I've been around a long time, so I know a lot of history. I want to talk. I had a poll we put out a while ago about who would people like me to sit down with. It was between Michael Francis, Sammy Gravano, and Joe Pistone. And Sammy Gravano was the winner. 80% of the people voted that I should sit down with Sammy. So that was a nice thing to hear. Another thing I want to talk about before I get to the rest of it is we're going to have a contest. It's called Mafia Trivia Boss. I'm just going to read the format. I'm going to read the rules out. It's Mafia Trivia Boss contest rules. You must be a Patreon member. You must come on my Zoom video so we see no cheating. Answer 10 questions correct and get $100. If no one wins, it rolls over to the next show. Winners get to compete for the title at the end of the year. A couple of the simple questions are going to be, which Italian-American mobster was the inspiration for Tony Soprano in The Sopranos? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you'd like to take a shot at the title of Mafia Trivia Boys, join my Patreon. The membership's only $5 a month. It helps me with my show, promote my show. So, you know, for $5, it's well worth it. You get to talk to us, ask us questions, participate in my contests. It should be a lot of fun. So last week, someone wrote in a question. This is a good question. Unfortunately, I know the answer to this. Did you eat good food in prison? Which prison had the best food? So, you know, I was in state prisons in New York State, and I was in federal prisons. Most of the time, we cooked for ourselves. In state prison, I cooked in my cell. I had hot pots, and the commissaries were really good in the state prisons I was in. So, you know, I had access to food. Plus, in state prisons, we were allowed to get packages once a month from our families. So I got a lot of canned goods. I got like super salads and cheeses and tomato sauces and macaronis. So I always ate good in prison from when I was a kid. I always ate good in prison. You know, Italian guys always eat good in prison, you know, just like in the movies, you know, we have it like that, you know, guys are good cooks and we hook it up, you know. As far as the food in the mess hall, the state prisons in New York State, the food's horrendous. In the mess hall, like it's horrible food in state prisons in the mess halls. You know, I only ate in the mess hall when I was foster, but most of the time we cooked for ourselves. In the 70s, we had courts. We cooked out in the yard, or we cooked, you know, on our units. And, you know, if we were in the units, we cooked in microwaves. It's amazing the things guys cook in jail in a microwave, cheesecakes and fried. I mean, it's amazing. We make sauce on Sunday with sardines. It tastes like lobster. It's amazing what you could do with a sardine in a tomato sauce. It's really good. It's so good that, not to get off the subject, it's so good that when my father got out of prison, he told my mother and my sister, my brother, about sardine sauce, and they didn't believe him. And he actually made it for them. And they ate it in my home and they loved it. He made sauce with sardines that tastes like lobsters. Lobster sauce. That's how good it was. My mother loved it. In the federal prisons, we cooked for ourselves, but the food was much better in the mess hall, especially on certain days. Like certain days we went, like on hamburger days, they gave bison burgers. They used buffalo meat to make the burgers because the government owns all the buffaloes. So they slaughtered. So in the federal prisons, they had bison burgers every Wednesday, burgers and French fries. We went to the mess hall. On hot dog days, we made our own onions and we made homemade onions and in the microwaves, and we took the onions and stuff with us to the mess hall, and we ate hot dogs because and then we swagged them out of the mess hall and we cooked them on the units, you know, with beans and stuff that we bought in the commissary. So the food in the mess hall was a little better than the state, much better than the state, but we still cooked for ourselves. On holidays in the feds, they give you a big spread. Like the other day was the 4th of July. You get a lot of food. You get corn on a cob and hamburgers and hot dogs and French fries and ice cream. And they have a big party in the yard. They have music and bands and contests. They have a whole big to-do in the feds on the 4th of July. The state has none of that. So, you know, that was my food experience in jail. Like I said, Italian guys, most of the time we cooked for ourselves in there. Another question was the mob involved with Studio 54? You know, Roy Cohen was their lawyer. He was a mob lawyer. You know, he was Steve Rebel's lawyer on his case with you know, the income tax case, which he did go to prison with. You know, everybody was hooked up with the mob, you know, especially Manhattan. A lot of club owners were with Matty the Horse. He was a captain in the Genovese family. He had all the gay clubs. He had all the machines in Manhattan. He was pretty hooked up in Manhattan. Like even the club I hung out in the Ritz, the owners were with Matty. Stanley London was with Matty. That's how we met him. You know, he was with Matty the Horse, even though he was close to my father, but he was on record with Matty the Horse, not with us. But, you know, we had the run of the place and Matty knew it. Matty didn't care. We didn't start no trouble in there. So, but I don't know if they were on record with anybody. You know, if I had to take an educated guess, I would say they were. You know, only for the fact that, you know, at that period of time, you really didn't operate in Manhattan without having some kind of mob hookup because they ran the show. At that point in time in Manhattan, they could shut you down. You know, they had all the bartenders and they had all the unions, you know. I'm pretty sure they did. I don't know who they were with. You know, Steve Rebel and I really didn't get along. We had a little incident. You know, I got along with him in the beginning when I went to Studio 54. I hung out mostly at the Ritz. I mean, I was in Studio. I was more of a Ritz guy downtown, you know, but I did go to Studio 54 many times. And then later on when Steve got out of jail, we had an incident with him in the Red Parrot, which was owned by the guy that owned it was actually directly with Paul Castellano. And I got in a little trouble over that. My father got a little hot with us because me and my brother caused a little trouble in there. And Paul Castellano sent word to my father to tell us to behave ourselves, but we never got barred out of there. But my father got a little upset with me and my brother. But and Steve Rebel used to come in there all the time, and he would drink with us. And then we had a little bit of a disagreement. So that was it. Another question is, did I ever hear from that the Wonder Bread Trail is disappearing from Jamaica back in the day? So Wonder Bread Trailers. So in my neighborhood, there was a Wonder Bread factory in Ozone Park. For those of you who don't know, it was right across the street from where I lived. And yeah, many trailers of bread disappeared. And it was there for years. they made Wonder Bread there. It was a Wonder Bread factory. So that's probably a question from somebody that grew up in Ozone Park that knew that the Wonder Bread factory was there where they baked the bread. And they used to have it was cool because on Atlantic Avenue, they had a little outlet store and they used to sell fresh Twinkies in there. And because Wonder Bread made all that and Hostess cupcakes and all that. And the Wonder Bread was fresh, right? Because back then when I was a kid, everybody ate Wonder Bread, white bread. Nobody whole wheat bread and 10, 16 grain bread. We ate white bread. We all ate white bread and everybody ate Wonder Bread. In my neighborhood anyway. Now you go into the store, there's a zillion different brands of bread. You don't even know what to get anymore. But back then it was white bread, Wonder Bread, and they made it in Ozone Park. They had a big Wonder Bread factory. And yes, it got robbed plenty of times. Here's another good question about my father's co-defendant, Tommy Agro. It says, Anthony, did Tommy Agro own a bar in Queens? He did. Did you know his two enforcers, Paul Principal and Frank Russo? Yes, I knew them very well. Frank Russo, they were the guys that were with him when he beat Joe Dogs half to death, the guy that informed on him. They were on my father's case. They were my father's co-defendants. Yeah, I knew both of them. I knew them good. They used to hang out with us in Florida. Frank Russo used to hang out with us all the time. And Paulie used to hang out with us all the time in Florida. They were good kids. They were always with Tommy. I haven't seen them in many, many, many years. So that's about it for the questions. Anything else I got here? Oh yeah, this one about the pizza. People keep asking me about pizza. What am I, a pizza expert? I mean, I said it, I'll say it again. The best Sicilian pizza for me is Ozone Pizza. It's on Liberty Avenue in Ozone Park. It's called Ozone Pizza. You want good, real Sicilian pizza? Go to Ozone Park, go to Ozone Pizza and get the Sicilian pizza. It's the best that I know of, that I like. So, I just want to talk. So today I put a picture up. So, on Facebook, after you have something on for a year, it gives you like a reminder if you want to repost it. So a year ago today, I posted a picture of my first time at the Copacabana in Manhattan. It was in 1969. My father took me to the Copa to see Tom Jones. Back then, he was the rage. Tom Jones, he had a big hit TV show. And I went with my cousin Pauline, my mother, my father, my mother, Tony Lee Guerreri, and his wife, Helen. I went with Nicky Carrazza and his wife, Lenny DiMaria and his wife, and Jojo Carrazza and his wife. We all went. The people at that table all became bosses and captains. They weren't straightened out yet at the time, Nicky, Lenny, and Jojo. They were associates at the time. It was just about the time I started working for my father and hanging around with them. My cousin Pauline, my aunt had just passed away. Unfortunately, my Aunt Julia, my cousin Pauline's mother, my father's sister, she just passed away from colon cancer at a very young age. And my cousin loved Tom Jones like everybody else did back then. And so my father took us to the Copa to see him. And, it coincides with Goodfellas, because in Goodfellas, there's a scene where Henry goes to the Copa on a date with his future wife, and how he got into the Copa through the basement up through the kitchen was exactly how we got into the Copa that night. So that scene in Goodfellas was right on the money. I mean, because when Tom Jones was there, the lines were around the block. It was like the Beatles were there. I mean, he was so big back then, it was crazy how big he was back then. And Junior Spadell, they had a system which was really good. So they would discover acts and they would sign them to 4-year contracts that they had to come to the Copa like twice a year for 4 years. And that's what happened with Tom Jones. Before his show and before he blew up, they signed him to a contract. So when he blew up with his TV show, he had to come do the Copa. And he had to come do the Copa anyway, because the 5 bosses owned it, and they would have fucked him up if he didn't come to the Copa. But contract, he had a legal obligation to go to the contract, and a lot of other acts had the same obligations. So how we got into the Copa was the same way. The people, all the public, the public, my father used to tell me all the time not to disrespect the public, but, like, don't feel they're getting disrespected. Don't even worry about them. They deserve everything they get for voting for these guys. Like, so, they were all waiting online, all the poor working people that went to work, that are spending their hard-earned money to go to the Copa to see Tom Jones, were waiting online. And, we went in through the basement, up through the kitchen, and sat at the rear, right in the middle, right there, and we saw Tom Jones, and there was all wise guys in there. Julius Spadell used to sit at a table and just nod to my father. My father was really, loved in there. They loved him, the captains, the waiters, that they all loved them. And people forget, people don't realize the Copa had the best Chinese food in Manhattan. The best Chinese food in Manhattan. They had, for some reason, they had the best Chinese food in Manhattan. And we would go in through the basement, up through the kitchen, and we would sit there and drink and then order Chinese food. After we just came from Peter Luger's, like a couple hours later, we would eat Chinese food in the Copa. And I used to love to go to the Copa. There was always mob guys in there. And we met John Gotti in there when he was a kid with Angelo Quack. He came, I was in the lounge. We would hang out in the lounge and drink with the celebrities, and it was just a great place, and we had some incidents in there, like, and it always tied in together with the mob and the music business. Like, I'll tell you a little story about Bobby Darin, the great Bobby Darin. I saw him there 3 times in the Copa. So my sister was graduating she graduated from 8th grade. And she wanted to see Bobby Darin. Well, we all wanted to see Bobby Darin. He was great, Bobby Darin. So we go to the Copa that night. Matter of fact, I have pictures of us there that night with my first wife, Alice, all my cousins, my brother, and all of it. I hope we had 2 tables. We had 2 tables. My father had 2 tables to see Bobby Darin. And so the show starts. He's great. He plays every instrument, singing. I mean, he was phenomenal. Bobby Darin, phenomenal in person. So after the show, my father grabs Carmine. He was the guy that ran the show, and told Carmine, listen, tell Bobby Darin that I want my daughter to meet him because it's her graduation, and tell him, I wanted to meet my daughter. So Carmine leaves. We're waiting, don't come back. The next thing I know, Carmine comes back and he says, Andy, I don't know what to tell you. This guy left. He said he left. Did he know that I was waiting here for him? That, to meet my daughter? He goes, yeah, I told him, the deal, and he left. My father goes, he left. All right. The next night, my father tells my sister, get dressed. My sister said, now my sister's a kid. My sister's just graduated 8th grade. She's a kid. My father tells my sister, get dressed. My sister, get dressed, why? She goes, so my mother goes, what do you mean get dressed? Where are you going? He goes, I'm taking her to the Copa. To Copa? My mother goes, you're taking her to the Copa? Yeah. My father gets in the car, just the 2 of them. Just her, him, and my sister. And they go. My sister came home that night with autographs, pictures, albums. He went back to the Copa and he told Carmine, you tell Bobby Darin that I'm back here with my daughter. And if my daughter don't meet him tonight, tell him he better run away. And my sister came home that night with autographs, pictures, everything. Now that was the second time we saw him. We had seen him first, just us adults. Then we saw him with my sister, right? Then we saw him a 3rd time. I have the 3rd time, he actually waited for us and took pictures with us. And I have a picture of him and my first wife, Alice. I have it blown up in the Copa, the 2 of them outside his dressing room door. He had his arm around her waist and he took a picture with my first wife. So, so the mob and the Copa and the music business, it all tied in. and Goodfellas got it right. You know, that's how we did it. You know, people that went to the Copa, mob guys, that's how they got in. You know, there was always mob guys in there every night, every show. You know, I went there the last week. They closed the Stylistics. I think it was the Stylistics or the Spinners. One of them groups were the last act there. I went to see before they closed. I went there to see them. But I saw so many great shows there throughout the years. It was just a great place to go. Definitely a mob hangout. You know, nobody fought there. You weren't allowed to fight in there. The five bosses were partners in it. Julius Spadell ran it for them. So, you know, you did not fight in the Copa, you know, and everybody was there. You know, my father and mother saw Sinatra there, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, Nat King Cole. I mean, they saw the biggest Julie Garland. I mean, they saw so many people in the Copa, and it was so intimate. You know, there's no places like that anymore to go see shows. Like, it was so intimate. You know, it was such a small place, and they were right there, and it was so intimate with you and the entertainer. It was just like it was amazing. It was amazing. And I used to love to go there. I took a lot of dates there. Girls, you know, it was crazy because, you know, I was a kid when it was open, and I just started running around the neighborhood, you know. So now I'm 18, 19, 20, and I'm going into bars, and there's girls in the bars that are 28, 29-year-old barmaids that are really hot. And I would tell them, what are you doing tomorrow night? Oh, you want to go to the Copa? And they would go, you can't get in the Copa. And I go, you want to go to the Copa? And I would take them to the Copa, and they would be blown away that I could actually get into the Copa. So that was a good thing. That was a good thing. I even signed a few tabs in there when I had no money and I was in Manhattan, and there was a show there. I picked up a girl in another club, and there was like sometimes they did 2 shows a night, and I would be short of cash. I would go there, and as long as I had enough money for tips, I would go there and I would sign my father's name on the tab. And then he would curse me because he used to go there to hang out in the he loved it there. They had a big lounge upstairs, a big lounge, and he would go there and hang out in the lounge a lot and just drink and hang out. And they had always had a band in the lounge, always had great entertainment in the lounge. So that Copa was definitely a mob thing. So I have a recovery hotline for those of you who don't know, for those of you who are struggling with addiction, or know somebody that's struggling with addiction. The number is 855-963-2113. You know, this is only for people that are suffering from addiction. It's not to talk to me. It's not to chit chat. This is to help people save their lives from alcohol and drug addiction. So if you know anybody, you know, give us a call.